Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku met his future self. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air tasted like aluminum and old pennies. It was a subtle flavor, sitting heavy on the back of Izuku Midoriya's tongue, refusing to wash away no matter how much water he drank. He sat at his desk, the hum of the air conditioner doing little to combat the oppressive, muggy heat of a Japanese summer night. On the desk, his notebook lay open, Hero Analysis for the Future, No. 14. But the ink on the page hadn't been touched in over an hour. He was staring at his right hand. He clenched it, watching the scars stretch and whiten against the tension. Then, he relaxed it. Clench. Relax. Clench. Relax. One for all is quiet tonight, he thought, and the thought itself felt loud in the silence of his room. Usually, the power was a thrumming river beneath his skin, a constant, comforting pressure that reminded him of All Might's legacy. Recently, with the manifestation of Black Whip, that river had become turbulent, prone to sudden riptides and surges that left him breathless. But tonight, it wasn't turbulent. It wasn't calm either. It was waiting. A sharp, static hiss buzzed behind his eyes, a headache that wasn't quite a headache. It felt like the sensation of walking near a high-voltage power line, the hair on his arms standing on end, reacting to a charge that wasn't there. Get it together, Izuku whispered to himself. He rubbed his temples, wincing as the static spiked, a high-pitched whine that drilled into his molars. You're just tired. Endeavor's training is intense. You're just tired. He closed the notebook with a snap, stood up, and grabbed his towel. A shower. Maybe some food. He hadn't eaten since lunch, and his metabolism, currently running on the hyperfuel of 45% full cowl training, was beginning to cannibalize itself. He opened his door and stepped into the hallway of Heights Alliance. The static in his head didn't fade. If anything, it grew louder, changing from a buzz to a rhythmic throb. Thump thump. Thump thump. Like a second heartbeat. The common area of the Class 1A dorms was a sanctuary of domestic chaos. It was a Friday night, which meant the usual rigorous curfew was relaxed by an hour, and the students were taking full advantage of it. As Izuku descended the stairs, the smell of curry and something burning, likely Kaminari trying to use a toaster, hit him. The noise was a physical wall. Ashido and Hagekyo were arguing loudly over a reality TV show playing on the communal screen. Shiro and Kirishima were arm wrestling on the coffee table, with Sato officiating. Midoriya! Ida's voice cut through the noise. The class representative was standing by the kitchen island, chopping vegetables with robotic precision. You are late for the communal meal prep. However, I have saved you a portion of the protein supplement. Izuku forced a smile, pushing down the nausea rising in his throat. The static was getting worse. It felt like someone was scratching a chalkboard inside his skull. Thanks, Ida? Just lost track of time. You're always mumbling in that creepy room of yours. Bakugo's voice came from the couch. He wasn't looking at Izuku. He was reading a manga, his feet propped up on the table despite Ida's repeated reprimands. Damn nerd. Kakakin, Izuku acknowledged, his voice tight. He walked to the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water. His hand shook as he lifted it. The water in the glass rippled. Izuku froze. He stared at the water. The ripples weren't coming from his shaking hand. They were coming from the center of the glass, concentric circles expanding outward, driven by a vibration he couldn't feel with his body, only with his quirk. Danger, the fourth user's quirk whispered, but it wasn't the sharp, stabbing pain of danger sense. It was different. It was deeper. It felt like sorrow. It felt like a scream traveling through miles of deep ocean water. Deku? Uraraka was suddenly beside him. Her eyes were wide, concern etched into her features. You look pale. Like really pale. Are you okay? Izuku gripped the counter. The granite felt like it was vibrating. Uraraka-san, do you feel that? Feel what? The air, Izuku rasped. It feels heavy. Suddenly, the lights in the common room flickered. Not a simple blink. They dimmed to a sickly orange, buzzed violently, and then flared blindingly bright before shattering. Pew-pee-pew-pee-pop. Glass rained down. The room plunged into darkness, save for the emergency lights that kicked on, bathing the dorms in a crimson wash. "What the hell?" Kaminari shrieked. "I didn't do it. I swear I didn't short it out." Everyone remained calm. Ida roared, his engines revving for illumination. "Form a perimeter. Momo, create flashlights." "Shut up, Four Eyes." Bakugo was already on his feet, small explosions popping in his palms. His red eyes scanned the room, feral and alert. "This isn't a power outage. Look outside." The class turned to the large sliding glass doors that led to the courtyard. The outside world was wrong. The sky above Yue wasn't the dark navy of night. It was bruising. Clouds were swirling in a tight, unnatural spiral directly above the Class 1A dorms, glowing with a sickly chaotic energy. Black lightning interlaced with veins of dark red. The wind picked up, howling not against the glass, but through the walls, a low-frequency vibration that rattled teeth. Izuku dropped his water glass. It shattered, but he didn't hear it. The static in his head had exploded into a roar. The vestiges were going insane. He could feel One for All recoiling, curling in on itself in terror. "He's here," a voice whispered in his mind. It wasn't the first. It wasn't Nana. It was a voice that sounded terrifyingly like his own, but dredged through gravel and blood. "He's here. Something's coming!" Izuku screamed, clutching his head. "Everyone, get back! Midoriya?" Todoroki stepped forward, his right side igniting to provide light. "What is it?" "I don't." Crack. The sound was louder than a thunderclap. It was the sound of the universe snapping a bone. In the center of the grassy courtyard, space tore open. It wasn't a warp gate like Kurogiri's subtle, misty voids. This was violent. A vertical gash of pure white energy ripped the air apart, jagged and unstable. The force of the rupture blew the sliding glass doors of the dorm inward. "Cover!" Kirishima yelled, hardening his skin instantly and diving in front of Ashido and Tsuyu. Shards of safety glass turned into shrapnel. The shockwave threw Izuku backward over the kitchen island. He hit the floor hard, rolling to his feet instantly, full cowling flaring to life, green lightning crackling around him. But his green lightning looked pale compared to what was pouring out of the rift. Black tendrils whipped out of the tear in reality, lashing at the ground, tearing up chunks of earth and concrete. The trees in the courtyard withered instantly where the energy touched them, leaves turning to ash in seconds. "Villain attack!" Ida shouted. "Emergency protocols! Jiro, contact Aizawa-sensei. Everyone else, combat positions. Die!" Bakugo didn't wait for protocols. He launched himself through the broken window frame, propelled by a massive explosion, heading straight for the anomaly. "Kaken, wait!" Izuku yelled, scrambling after him. The rift pulsed one final time, expanding wide enough to swallow a truck, and then spat something out. A figure was hurled from the light. They hit the ground with the weight of a tank, skidding across the grass, tearing a trench through the soil before slamming into the concrete base of the majestic 1A statue. The impact cracked the stone foundation. The rift slammed shut behind the figure, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. The wind died instantly. The red lightning faded. Silence fell over the courtyard, heavy and suffocating. The emergency alarms of UA finally began to blare, a distant, wailing siren that seemed miles away compared to the pounding of Izuku's heart. The figure in the crater groaned. Class 1A poured out into the courtyard, fanning out in a defensive semicircle. Todoroki had his ice ready. Tokoyami had dark shadow fully manifested, the entity screeching in agitation. "Don't move!" Bakugo shouted, aiming his gauntlet at the dust cloud rising from the crater. "Identify yourself, or I'll blast you to hell." The dust began to settle. Izuku stood frozen, his breath caught in his throat. The resonance in OFA was no longer a static buzz. It was a magnetic pull. Every cell in his body was screaming that the thing in the crater was important. A hand reached out of the dust, gripping the edge of the concrete. It was a gauntlet. But it was shattered. The metal was twisted, the support bracing snapped, wires sparking weakly. The glove itself was stained a deep, rusty brown. The figure pulled themselves up. A collective gasp rippled through the students. The intruder was massive. Not in height, he appeared to be average height, but in build. His shoulders were broad, packed with dense muscle that strained against the tattered remains of a hero costume. He wore a bodysuit that might have once been teal or green, but was now so stained with soot, mud, and dried blood that it appeared almost black. Around his neck hung a yellow cape, but it was shredded, barely more than a scarf, burned at the edges. Iron sawls, cracked and worn, scraped against the concrete as he stood. He swayed, favoring his left leg. I said, identify yourself? Bakugo's hands sparked, small pops of nitroglycerin signaling his dwindling patience. The figure didn't answer. He stood with his head bowed, his breathing ragged and wet. Wheeze. Rattle. Wheeze. He's hurt, Uraraka whispered, her hero instincts warring with her fear. Look at the blood. There was a lot of it. A fresh wound on his side was soaking through the fabric of his suit. His left arm hung limp. Slowly, the intruder lifted his head. He wore a metal respirator mask, similar to Izuku's, but this one covered his entire lower face, angular and industrial. The eye holes of his cowl were covered by dark, cracked lenses. One of the long ears of the cowl had been sheared off completely. The intruder looked around, his head turning mechanically. He looked at the dorm building, intact, lights flickering. He looked at the trees, mostly green. He looked at the students. His gaze stopped on All Might's statue near the entrance path. No, the intruder rasped. The voice was distorted by the mask, deep and wrecked, sounding like gravel grinding in a mixer. No, he said again, louder. He took a step forward, stumbling. This is... Last warning. Bakugo roared. He wasn't waiting. He hated unknowns. He hated the fear he could smell coming off his classmates. He launched himself forward, a howitzer impact winding up in his right arm. Die! Bakugo, stop! Kirishima yelled. The explosion lit up the night. Bakugo didn't hold back. He aimed right for the center of mass, a blast strong enough to knock out Inomu. Boom! Smoke billowed. The shockwave rattled the windows again. Got him, Bakugo snarled, landing in a crouch, smoke curling from his palms. No, Todoroki said, his voice trembling slightly. You didn't. The smoke cleared. Bakugo's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. The intruder was standing in the exact same spot. He hadn't moved his feet. He had simply raised his right hand. He had caught Bakugo's arm, not the explosion. He had caught Bakugo. His gloved hand was wrapped around Bakugo's gauntlet, holding the explosive teen in place with casual, terrifying strength. The explosion had washed over the intruder, singeing the cape, but he hadn't flinched. Let go of me! Bakugo screamed, igniting his other hand to blast the intruder's face. The intruder didn't look at Bakugo. He was looking at his own hand gripping the gauntlet. Kaken! The intruder whispered. The name froze everyone. Bakugo stopped struggling. The malice drained out of his face, replaced by sheer confusion. Ha! The intruder slowly turned his head to look Bakugo in the eye. Through the cracked lenses of the cowl, a faint, dying green glow was visible. You're loud, the intruder mumbled, almost fondly. You're always so loud. Then, the intruder's grip tightened, not to crush, but to pull. He yanked Bakugo closer, leaning in until their masks almost touched. But you're dead, the intruder said. The statement was flat. A fact. I watched you die. I watched your heart stop. Bakugo went pale. What the foo? The intruder released him, shoving him back gently. The motion was fluid, but the moment he let go, the intruder's body seemed to give up. The adrenaline crash was instantaneous. The figure swayed violently. He coughed, a wet, hacking sound that sprayed blood onto the inside of his mask. System, failure, the intruder wheezed. %0. He collapsed. He didn't fall like a person. He fell like a tree, straight forward, face planting into the grass with a dull thud. Secure him! Ida yelled, snapping out of his trance. Todoroki, bind him! Shoji Sato, back up Bakugo. Uraraka, get recovery girl. Todoroki stomped his right foot, sending a wave of ice to encase the fallen figure's arms and legs, pinning him to the earth. The intruder didn't struggle. Izuku moved before he thought. He sprinted past Bakugo, who was staring at his own arm as if it belonged to a stranger. Izuku slid to his knees beside the frozen figure. Midoriya, get back! He's dangerous, Ida warned. He's dying, Izuku yelled back. Up close, the smell was overwhelming: ozone, rotting meat, old blood, and gunpowder. Izuku reached for the intruder's cowl. We need to clear his airway. He's choking on blood. Wait, Deku, Kirishima started. Izuku found the clasp under the chin of the heavy metal mask. It was jammed. With a surge of 5% OFA, he snapped the locking mechanism and peeled the helmet off. The metal came away with a wet suction sound. Izuku dropped the mask on the grass. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Under the mask was a face that every student in Class 1A knew better than their own siblings. But it was wrong. It was a ruin. The hair was green, but cropped short in a utilitarian, military buzz cut, streaked with premature gray and caked with grime. A thick, jagged scar ran from the left corner of his mouth all the way up to his ear, pulling his lip into a permanent, gruesome snarl. Another scar bisected his right eyebrow, blinding that eye with a milky white film. The skin was weathered, leathery from exposure to sun and radiation. There were bags under the eyes so dark they looked like bruises. But the bone structure was undeniable. The freckles, though faded, were there. It was Izuku Midoriya. No way, Zero whispered. Is that? Ashido covered her mouth, tears instantly springing to her eyes. Present Izuku stared down at the face of the man on the ground. He felt like he was falling. He looked at the scar on the mouth. He looked at the gray hair. The man on the ground opened his one good eye, a piercing, toxic green. He looked up at Izuku. The two Midoriyas stared at each other. The resonance in their quirks slammed together like two galaxies colliding. A shockwave of pure pressure blasted outward from them, not wind, but will. It knocked Todoroki and Bakugo off their feet. It shattered the remaining windows of the dorms. It's me, the voice in Izuku's head roared. It's us. It's the end. The older Midoriya's lips moved. Run, he whispered to his younger self. Then his eye rolled back, and he went limp. 1 hour later, the UA infirmary was usually a place of comfort. It smelled of antiseptic and gummy candies. But tonight, it felt like a morgue. Recovery girl stood on a step stool, her face grave as she scanned the monitors hooked up to the patient. Cementos and ectoplasm were guarding the door. All Might, in his skeletal true form, sat in a chair in the corner, his hands clasped so tightly together that his knuckles were white. Aizawa stood by the bed, his capture weapon loose around his neck, his eyes bloodshot but unblinking. Outside the glass partition, Izuku, Bakugo, and Todoroki were allowed to wait. The rest of the class had been confined to the dorms under Midnight's supervision. Status? Aizawa asked, his voice low. Recovery girl sighed, pulling a sheet up over the scarred chest of the man in the bed. It's a miracle he's alive, Shota. Truly. She pointed to the X-ray on the screen. Multiple healed fractures in every major limb. His humerus has been shattered and plated together. 3 missing ribs. His left lung is working at 60% capacity due to scar tissue. And, she hesitated, pointing to his left hand, which was resting on top of the sheets. The pinky and ring fingers were gone. Just gone. Cauterized stumps. What about the quirk factor? All Might asked. His voice was hollow. He looked terrified. That's the most disturbing part, Recovery Girl said. She tapped a different monitor. His DNA is a match for Midoriya Izuku. 100%. But his cellular age? He's roughly 26 or 27 years old. But his body? She shook her head. His bones have the density of someone who has lived under extreme pressure for decades. And his quirk analysis. What is it? Aizawa pressed. It's overloaded, she said. The energy stored in this man's body makes All Might in his prime look like a AA battery. It's so dense it's actually interfering with my equipment. If he loses control while he sleeps, he could level the campus. All Might stood up. He walked to the bedside. He looked down at the scarred, broken face of his successor, young Midoriya. All Might whispered. What happened to you? What kind of future creates this? As if hearing the voice, the man in the bed stirred. The heart monitor spiked. Beep 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 beep. Aizawa's hair floated up. He activated erasure instantly, fixing his gaze on the man. Don't move. The future Midoriya's eyes snapped open. He didn't gasp. He didn't flinch. He went from unconscious to fully alert in a microsecond. He sat up, ignoring the 4 lines tearing out of his skin. He saw Aizawa. He saw the red eyes. Erasure, the man croaked. Good. Keep it active. I can't control the leakage yet. Who are you? Aizawa demanded, not blinking. The man swung his legs over the side of the bed. He looked at his missing fingers, then at All Might. When he saw All Might, the soldier-like demeanor cracked. The man's face crumbled. He looked like a child who had lost his parents in a crowd. Toshi. The man started, then stopped himself. He cleared his throat, forcing the steel back into his spine. I am the pro-hero Deku. Or, I was, from the future? All Might asked. 10 years, Prime Deku said. He rubbed his face, feeling the lack of a mask. Roughly. Time gets slippery near the end. The end? Aizawa asked. The end of what? Prime Deku looked through the glass partition. He locked eyes with the younger Izuku, who was pressing his hands against the glass, tears streaming down his face. Prime's expression hardened. It was a look of profound pity and utter exhaustion. The end of everything, Prime said softly. Shigaraki, all for one. The war. Did we lose? All Might asked, dreading the answer. Prime Deku laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound that sounded like sandpaper. Lose? No. We won. He gestured to his own mutilated body. We killed Shigaraki. We burned All for One to ash. We won the war. He looked up at All Might, and a single tear leaked from his good eye, tracking through the grime on his cheek. But there was nobody left to celebrate. Japan is a graveyard, All Might. I am the #1 hero of a country of ghosts. The silence in the room was heavy enough to crush bones. Why are you here? Aizawa asked finally. Prime Deku clenched his 3-fingered fist. Green sparks, darker, angrier than Izuku's, flickered around his hand, fighting against Aizawa's erasure. I didn't mean to come back, Prime said. But now that I'm here, I'm going to fix it. He looked at the door, where Bakugo was standing with his arms crossed, looking like he was about to vomit. I'm going to kill Shigaraki, Prime said. The intent in his voice was murderous, cold, and absolute. Tonight. Before he wakes up. Before he takes everything from you. He stood up, the floor tiles cracking under his bare feet. Where is he? Prime demanded. Where is the doctor? Tell me the date. Tell me. The roar shook the room. On the other side of the glass, Izuku slid down to the floor, clutching his chest. The static was gone. In its place was a terrifying clarity. The hero he wanted to be was standing in that room. And that hero was a monster. This, Izuku realized with a chilling certainty, is what Plus Ultra costs. The silence in the Yue infirmary was distinct from the silence of a library or an empty house. It was a pressurized silence, heavy with things unsaid and realities too sharp to touch without cutting oneself. Izuku Midoriya, the younger one, the one whose costume was still bright teal and whose hands still had 10 fingers, sat on a plastic chair in the waiting area. He was hunched over, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly together. He was vibrating. It wasn't anxiety, though he was certainly anxious. It was a physical resonance. Every time the man in the critical care unit shifted, or breathed, or even thought too loudly, Izuku felt a sympathetic thrum in his own chest. The stockpile of One for All was reacting. It felt like 2 magnets of the same polarity being forced together. The vestiges, usually a chorus of distant whispers or vague feelings, were currently a cacophony of confusion. Who is he? The 5th user's voice was sharp. It feels like us, but rotten, the 4th whispered, his danger sense prickling constantly. So much power, Nana Shimura wept in the dark corners of Izuku's mind. It's too much heavy lifting for one soul. Stop mumbling, Bakugo's voice cut through the noise. Izuku snapped his head up. He hadn't realized he was doing it. Katsuki Bakugo was leaning against the far wall, arms crossed so tight his biceps were bulging. He hadn't washed the soot from his face since the courtyard incident. His eyes were fixed on the double doors of the ICU, burning with a mixture of fury and a terrified sort of curiosity that he would never admit to. I didn't mean to, Izuku whispered. He called me dead, Bakugo said. He didn't look at Izuku. He stared at the floor tiles. That bastard looked me in the eye, caught my blast like it was a gentle breeze, and told me I was dead. He was confused, Kaken. He was injured. He wasn't confused, Shoto Todoroki interjected. The dual-core accuser was sitting perfectly still next to Izuku, his expression unreadable, though the temperature around him was fluctuating wildly, 1 second cold, the next hot. He knew exactly who you were. And he knew exactly who you weren't. Todoroki looked at his own hand. He had the eyes of someone who has buried us all. The doors to the ICU hissed open. Recovery girl stepped out. She looked older than Izuku had ever seen her. Usually, the youthful heroine carried herself with a sprightly, stern energy. Now, she looked shrunken, clutching her syringe cane like a lifeline. Is he? Izuku started, standing up. He is stabilized, recovery girl said, her voice raspy. Though stable is a relative term for a man whose physiology is effectively a walking nuclear reactor. She motioned for them to sit back down, but she remained standing, looking at the 3 top students of Class 1A. Aizawa and All Might are speaking with him now. Detective Tsukachi has just arrived to verify his statements. But boys, you need to prepare yourselves. For what? Bakugo demanded. For the physical reality of what happens when a human body is pushed beyond its absolute limit for a decade, she said grimly. I have treated many heroes. I treated All Might during his prime. I have never seen a medical chart like this. She pulled a tablet from her coat pocket and tapped the screen, projecting a holographic skeleton into the air between them. Izuku gasped. The skeleton was a road map of agony. These are healed fractures. Recovery girl pointed to the arms. The bones looked thick, misshapen, fused together in ways that suggested they had been broken and set in the field, without proper medical attention. His forearms are essentially solid calcium deposits now. But that's not the worst of it. She zoomed in on the spine, microfractures in every vertebrae. Compression damage consistent with carrying thousands of tons of weight repeatedly. And here. She pointed to the heart. His heart walls are thickened. Hypertrophy. His resting heart rate is 30 beats per minute because his heart is so powerful it doesn't need to beat faster. But if he gets adrenaline, if he pushes it, he explodes, Todoroki surmised. He strokes out, recovery girl corrected. Or his heart simply tears itself apart from the force of its own contractions. She turned off the hologram. And then there are the fingers. Izuku involuntarily curled his left hand into a fist. Cauterized, she said softly. Roughly. Likely with a heat quirk, or a heated blade. No surgical precision. Just chopped and burned to stop the bleeding so he could keep fighting. Why? Izuku whispered. Why would he? Why would I? Because, a deep voice came from the doorway. They turned. Aizawa stood there. He looked exhausted. His capture weapon hung loose, and his eyes were dry, but he motioned them over. Because in his time, stopping meant dying, Aizawa said. He's asking for you 3. Specifically, he wants to see us? Bakugo scoffed, pushing off the wall. Good. I have questions. Be warned, Aizawa said, blocking Bakugo's path with an arm. He is not the Midoriya you know. Do not expect him to be. The interior of the intensive care room was kept at a chilly temperature to suppress bacterial growth, but the air around the bed felt scorching. The man, future Deku, or Prime, as Izuku's mind had begun to label him to differentiate, was sitting on the edge of the reinforced hospital bed. He had stripped off the top half of the patient gown, leaving it pooling at his waist. Seeing the scars on a hologram was one thing. Seeing them on flesh was another. His torso was a tapestry of violence. Burned stars, slash marks that twisted the skin, and circular puncture wounds that looked disturbingly like bullet holes. A massive, keloid scar dominated his chest, right over the heart, shaped vaguely like a handprint. Detective Tsukachi sat in a chair near the foot of the bed, his notepad out, looking pale. All Might stood in the corner, his back to the window, his skeletal face hidden in shadow. Prime looked up as the students entered. His eyes were the first thing Izuku noticed. They were green, yes, but the shine was gone. They were matte, flat, and constantly moving. Even as he looked at them, his eyes were tracking the exit routes, checking the structural integrity of the ceiling, assessing the threat level of the 4-pole. Midoriya, Prime said. His voice was a low rumble, stripped of the nervous cadence Izuku was known for. Izuku swallowed. Hi. Or hello? Me. Prime didn't smile. He gestured to the chairs opposite him. Sit. You too, Kaken. Shoto. The use of the first name for Todoroki surprised the dual quirk user, but he sat without complaint. Tsukachi says I have to prove who I am, Prime said, leaning back slightly, though his muscles remained coiled tight. Apparently, Toga Himiko's transformation abilities have made you all paranoid. That's good. Paranoia keeps you breathing. It's standard protocol, Tsukachi said gently. Please state your full name and date of birth. Midoriya Izuku. July 15th. Prime rattled off the year. Quirk, one for all. Formerly quirkless. Mother, Midoriya Inko. Father, absent. Truth, Tsukachi murmured, the pen in his hand scratching across the paper. Current age? Chronologically? 26. Biologically? Who knows? Prime looked at his hand, the one with 3 fingers. He flexed the stumps. The vestiges stopped keeping track of time for me about 4 years ago. The vestiges talk to you? Izuku asked, stepping forward. They're loud right now. They're confused. Prime looked at his younger self. For a second, the hardness in his face softened, revealing a deep, aching exhaustion. They're confused because they're dead in me, Prime said. The room went cold. What? All Might choked out from the corner. One for all is a stockpile, Prime said, tapping his chest. It stockpiles power. It stockpiles will. But everything has a fuel source. When the world ended, when the fighting never stopped, I drew on them too much. I burned through the consciousness of the predecessors to fuel the raw power needed to kill the high-ends. He looked at Izuku with a haunting intensity. Nana went first. She gave herself up so I could float an entire city block that was collapsing. The first, he held on the longest. But eventually, they all faded. I'm alone in here now. Just power, no voices. Izuku felt sick. The idea of the vestiges, those guiding spirits, being burned as fuel was horrifying. You said the world ended, Todoroki said calmly, steering the conversation back to facts. Recovery Girl said you mentioned a war? Prime turned his gaze to Todoroki. What is the date? October 12th, Tsukachi answered. Prime closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, held it for 10 seconds, and exhaled. The Paranormal Liberation War begins in late March, Prime said. You're currently training for an assault on the hospital and the mountain villa. You think you have the element of surprise. You think Hawks has given you enough intel. He hasn't? Aizawa asked, his eyes narrowing. Hawks is compromised. Not because he's a traitor, but because they know he's there, Prime said. Dalby knows. He's playing with him. Prime opened his eyes. In my timeline, we launched the raid. It went well at first. We captured Garaki. We thought we stopped Shigaraki's awakening. Thought? Bakugo pressed. He woke up at 75%, Prime said. And 75% was enough to level the city of Jakku in a single touch. We lost so many. Crust. Midnight. Aizawa flinched, majestic. X-less. Hundreds of civilians. Prime listed the names like he was reading a grocery list, devoid of emotion because he had clearly grieved them 1,000 times already. But we pushed him back. We hurt him. He retreated. So we won, Bakugo said. He retreated. That's a win. Prime let out a short, sharp laugh. If you fight a rabid dog and it runs into the woods, have you won? No. You've just let it heal. Prime leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Shigaraki's body was failing. He needed time. The heroes, public society collapsed. The destruction of Jakku caused the faith in heroes to evaporate. Prison breaks happened. Tartarus fell. All for one escaped. That's where your timeline is heading. We can stop the prison breaks, All Might said, stepping into the light. If we know, you can't stop them with the current number of heroes. Prime snapped, his voice rising. The monitors beeped faster. You don't understand. It wasn't just villains. It was the people. They turned on us. They bought support gear on the black market. Vigilantism spiked. The streets became war zones. Heroes retired in droves because they were being hunted by the very people they tried to save. Prime looked at his missing fingers again. The war of attrition lasted 3 years. Japan was quarantined by the UN. No aid came. We were locked in a cage with a monster that kept evolving. And the monster? Izuku asked. Shigaraki? Shigaraki fused completely with All for One, Prime said. He became something absolute. He didn't just want to destroy. He wanted to rule a wasteland. He started hunting quirk users specifically. To steal, to hoard. Prime pointed at Bakugo. That's how you died, Kaken? Bakugo stiffened. It was year 4, Prime said, his voice dropping to a whisper. We were cornered in the ruins of UA. The barrier was down. Shigaraki was coming for one for all. I was slower then. I had broken my leg a week prior. I couldn't move fast enough. Prime's eyes glossed over, seeing a memory from hell. He launched a rivet stab. Aimed at my heart. You didn't even use your quirk. You just shoved me. You took it. Bakugo didn't breathe. He took your explosion, Prime said softly. And then he dusted you. You didn't leave a body to bury, Kaken. Just dust on the wind. Bakugo's hands were trembling. Not small tremors, but violent shakes. He shoved them into his pockets. I didn't ask for the gory details, you scarred freak. I needed you to know, Prime said simply. Because you saved me. And because of that, I had to live. I had to carry it alone. He turned to Todoroki. Dabi is Toya. Todoroki froze. What? Dabi is your brother, Toya Todoroki. He burns himself because his body is made for ice. But his quirk is fire hotter than Endeavor's. The room was silent. Sakachi stopped writing. Aizawa looked at Todoroki, ready to intervene if the boy snapped. He kills Endeavor, Prime continued, merciless in his delivery of the truth. Suicide attack. Burn them both to ash in the middle of Shibuya Crossing. You watched it happen, Shoto. You froze half of Tokyo in grief. It took us a week to thaw the district out. Todoroki stared at the wall, his eyes wide, processing the horror. Toya, why are you telling us this? Izuku cried out. Tears were streaming down his face. Why are you telling us exactly how we lose? So you hate them, Prime said. What? I need you to hate them, Prime said, his voice turning steel-hard. I need you to stop looking at Shigaraki like a victim who needs saving. I need you to stop looking at Toga like a misunderstood girl. I need you to understand that they are death. Prime stood up. He walked over to Izuku. He towered over his younger self, not in height, but in presence. He felt like a mountain. I was like you, Prime said. I wanted to save that crying child inside Shigaraki. I reached out my hand. He held up his 3-fingered hand, and he took my fingers. And then he killed everyone I loved. You cannot save someone who only wants to watch the world burn, Izuku. You have to put them down. That's not what All Might taught us. Izuku argued, stepping back. We win by saving. We save by winning. All Might is a relic of a golden age. Prime roared. The shout cracked the glass of the window. Prime spun around to face All Might. Look at him. Prime gestured to the skinny, skeletal man. He built a society on a single pillar. And when that pillar cracked, the roof caved in on us. He retired. He got to live in the safety of the flashbacks while we drowned in the blood. Young Midoriya. All Might stepped forward, tears in his hollow eyes. I am so sorry. I never wanted this for you. I know, Prime whispered, his anger deflating instantly, leaving him hollow. I know you didn't, Toshi. That's the worst part. You loved us. And we died anyway. Prime sat back down on the bed, the energy draining out of him. He looked at Aizawa. I'm tired, Eraser. I've been fighting for 10 years without a break. I haven't slept more than 2 hours a night since I was 18. Aizawa stepped forward. He placed a hand on Prime's shoulder. It was a rare gesture of comfort from the logical teacher. Rest, Aizawa said. You're safe here. The barrier is up. We are watching. The barrier means nothing to Shigaraki, Prime mumbled, his eyes closing. But okay. Just for an hour. Sakachi, Aizawa said quietly. Is he telling the truth? Sakachi looked at his notepad. It was filled with messy scrawls. He looked up, his face pale and sweaty. Every word, Scotchy said. He believes every single word. The deaths. The collapse. The identity of Dabi. It's all true in his mind. Then we have a problem, Aizawa said. Because if the war starts in March, he said the timeline changed, Izuku whispered. Everyone looked at Izuku. In the courtyard, Izuku said. Before he passed out. He said system failure. But before that, when he first arrived, he looked at the sky. The lightning, Bakugo muttered. The black lightning. His arrival, Izuku realized, looking at Prime's sleeping form. The energy required to punch a hole through time, it must be massive. Like a beacon, Todoroki finished. If Shigaraki and All for One can sense one for all. Izuku's eyes widened in horror. They just felt a second sun appear in the sky. As if on cue, the red emergency alarms of UA began to blare again. Warning! Warning! Seismic activity detected, Aizawa cursed. Seismic? Is it an earthquake? No, Prime said. He wasn't asleep. He was standing again, his eyes glowing with that dull, toxic green. Danger sense was flaring so hard the air around him was distorting. It's not an earthquake, Prime said. He walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. Far in the distance, toward the mountains, a massive dust cloud was rising. And moving. Fast. It's Gigantomachia, Prime said. Machia? All Might grip the windowsill. But he's dormant. The doctor has him hidden. He was dormant, Prime said. He turned to look at them, and for the first time, he summoned the full cowl. But it wasn't the bright, hopeful lightning of Izuku. Prime's lightning was jagged, silent, and terrifyingly concentrated. It didn't leak. It didn't waste energy. It hummed with the efficiency of a guillotine. My arrival woke them up, Prime said. The timeline isn't 5 months away. The war isn't in March. He walked toward the door, grabbing a spare medical gown to tie around his waist like a belt. The war is tonight. The teacher's lounge 5 minutes later. Principal Nisa sat on the shoulder of Power Loader, watching the screens in the command center. The entire staff was assembled. Report. Nisa chirped, though his tail was bristling with anxiety. Seismic sensors confirm a massive entity moving at 100 km per hour toward the Musudafa prefecture, Power Loader said. Trajectory is direct. It's heading for Yue. Visuals confirmed, Snipe added, typing on a keyboard. Satellite imagery shows, good lord. On the main screen, a grainy night vision image appeared. A mountain of muscle was tearing through a forest, knocking down trees like they were toothpicks. On its back, several figures could be seen clinging to its mane. The League, Midnight whispered. They're mobilizing everything, Aizawa said, bursting into the room, flanked by Prime, All Might, and the 3 students. The teachers froze at the sight of Prime. Is that? President Mike lowered his sunglasses. The intruder? He's not an intruder, Aizawa said. He's an asset. And he says we have less than 20 minutes before impact. Prime stepped forward. He looked at the map of UA on the screen. He didn't ask for permission. He started pointing. Gigantomachia will breach the perimeter here, at Gate 4. He ignores barriers. He'll dig under or smash through. His goal is to retrieve the target. Target? Nisa asked. You mean Midoriya? Me, Prime corrected. And him. He pointed at Izuku. To One for All's in the same location. To All for One, this is a buffet. We need to evacuate the students, Cementos rumbled. No time, Prime said. If you move them, they die in transit. Machia is faster than any bus. You have to fortify. Prime looked at Nisa. Director Nizu. In my time, you devised the floating fortress strategy for the final war. Did you finish the schematics for the subterranean plates? Nisa's eyes widened. That is highly classified, only in the conceptual phase. Activate them, Prime ordered. Raise the barrier plates. Turn the school into a bunker. Put the students in the shelters beneath the support course workshops. Those are reinforced with tungsten, correct? How do you know that? Power Loader asked, affronted. Because I hid in them for 3 days while Hyan Nomus tore the upper levels apart looking for me, Prime said flatly. Nisa paused. He looked at Prime's eyes. He saw the absolute certainty of a tactician who had lost everything except his knowledge. Do it, Nisa ordered. Initiate Protocol Omega. Lock down the campus. Wait. Izuku stepped forward. If they're coming for us, we should leave. Draw them away. Strategic suicide, Prime countered. Out in the open, Shigaraki has the advantage. He can decay entire cities. Here, we have erasure. We have defense systems. We have me. You can't fight. Recovery Girl yelled from the doorway. Your body is falling apart. Prime looked at her. He smiled. It was a small, sad, genuine smile. Shio, he used her first name, shocking her. I'm already dead. I'm a time paradox held together by willpower and duct tape. I'm not here to survive. I'm here to make sure they do. He gestured to the teachers. I know every weakness of the League. I know Dabi's cooldown limits. I know how to trick Toga's transformation. I know the gap in Makia's armor. He walked over to the window, looking out at the darkness where the rumble of the approaching giant was beginning to be felt through the floor. I am the ghost of number 1, Prime said. And tonight, I'm going to haunt them. He turned back to Izuku. Suit up, Deku. You're not watching this one. You're fighting beside me. Izuku stared at him. He felt the fear. He felt the trembling in his legs. But he also felt the surge of one for all answering the call. Yes, sir, Izuku said. Don't call me sir, Prime grunted, walking toward the door. Call me Deku. It's the name of a hero. The principal's office at UA was designed to be a calming space. The tea set was always porcelain, the lighting was always warm, and the faint scent of Earl Grey usually permeated the air. Tonight, the office smelled like copper and cold sweat. The holographic map on Nisa's desk bathed the room in a grim red light. The blinking dot representing Gigantomachia was no longer at the edge of the prefecture. It was carving a straight line through the evacuation zones, moving with a speed that physics shouldn't allow for something that size. Impact in 18 minutes, Power Loader announced from his laptop, his voice tight. He's not navigating. He's plowing. He just ran through the suspended highway bridge in District 4. Casualties? Midnight asked, her hand gripping the back of a chair. Unknown. Hi, Power Loader replied. In the center of the room stood the fractured council of UA's leadership. Mizu, Aizawa, Vlad King, and Midnight were present. All Might, in his deflated form, leaned against the wall, looking more fragile than ever. And then there was Prime. The future Izuku Midoriya had refused the wheelchair Recovery Girl offered. He stood by the window, wrapped in a fresh UA gym tracksuit that strained against his unnatural bulk. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable behind the scars. He looked like a soldier waiting for a dropship, not a hero planning a defense. This creates a divergence, Nisa said, his paws trembling slightly as he poured tea that no one would drink. In your timeline, Midoriya-san, the war began with a coordinated raid by the heroes. We had the initiative. We had the illusion of initiative, Prime corrected, turning from the window. But yes. This is different. Gigantomachia waking up now. It means All for One has discarded the board. Discarded? Aizawa narrowed his eyes. He knows I'm here, Prime said. Or rather, he knows power is here. He's panicked. He's sending the rook to flip the table before the game can even start. If Makia breaches the campus, Vlad King grunted, the students will fight, Prime said. They are children. Midnight snapped. First years. They aren't soldiers. Prime turned his gaze on her. It was a flat, dead look that silenced the room. Kuyama-sensei, Prime said softly, using her real name. In my timeline, you died because you tried to put a villain to sleep instead of putting him down. You hesitated. The villain didn't. Midnight recoiled as if slapped. I'm not saying this to hurt you, Prime continued, his voice devoid of malice. I'm telling you the cost of treating this like a school trip. Tonight is not a test. There are no grades. There is only survival. He walked over to the holographic map. He didn't ask for permission to touch the controls. He expanded the view of the UA grounds. The evacuation shelters are traps, Prime stated. Makia can sense vibrations. If you put the students underground in a cluster, he will dig. He will crush the shelter like a soda can. Then where? Nisa asked. The floating fortress isn't ready to launch. We can raise the plates, but we can't fly, Jim Gamma Prime said. It's reinforced with the cement quark compounds. It's above ground, but structural. We put the support course in general studies there. We surround it with the heavy hitters. And Class 1A? Aizawa asked. And 1B? They are the front line, Prime said. Absolutely not, Aizawa hissed, his hair beginning to float. I will not send my students to die. They won't die if they listen to me, Prime shot back, his voice rising for the first time, cracking with a sudden, raw desperation. Eraser, you don't understand. If we run, Makia chases. If he chases, he destroys the city. He won't stop until he gets to me and him. We have to draw him in. We have to kill him here. Kill? All Might spoke up, his voice trembling. Young Midoriya, we apprehend. We detain. Prime looked at his mentor. The look was so full of sorrow it was hard to watch. You can't detain an earthquake, Toshi, Prime whispered. You can't handcuff a hurricane. He looked back at the map. Class 1A has the best synergy. 1B has the best area control with Komori and Hananuki. We combine them. Soften the ground. Trap his legs. Then we hit him with everything we have. Prime tapped a location on the map, the fake city district, ground beta. We funnel him here. It's isolated. Minimal infrastructure damage. I'll take point. You. Recovery girl scoffed from the doorway. You're holding on to life by a thread. If you use one for all at 100%, your heart will explode. Then I'll use 45%, Prime lied. Everyone in the room knew it was a lie. I'm the bait. He wants the quirk. I'll give him a target he can't ignore. And the other Midoriya? Nisa asked. President Mike is escorting him to the panic room as we speak. Bring him out, Prime ordered. No, Aizawa said. Bring him out. Prime slammed his hand onto the desk. The heavy oak splintered under his fist. The resonance helps us. When we are close, our quirks amplify. I can stabilize his black whip. He can stabilize my life force. We are stronger together. Prime looked Aizawa in the eye. You want to expel me? Fine. Do it after we win. But right now, I am the only person in this building who knows how to kill a high-end Nomu with a ballpoint pen. Do you want my help, or do you want to write 20 eulogies tomorrow morning? The silence stretched, taut as a wire. Aizawa held the gaze for a long moment. He saw the trauma in the man's eyes, but he also saw the tactical brilliance. He saw the student he had expelled 100 times in his mind, grown up into a weapon. Aizawa let out a long, ragged sigh. He tapped his earpiece. Mike, turn around. Bring Midoriya to Gym Gamma. Get Class A and B suited up. Protocol Omega is in effect. Prime relaxed, his shoulders slumping slightly. Thank you? Don't thank me, Aizawa muttered, turning to the door. Just don't let them die. Or I'll kill you myself. Get in line, Prime murmured to himself as the teachers scrambled into action. Gym Gamma 15 minutes to impact. The locker room was usually a place of banter. Mineta complaining about training, Kirishima showing off a new hardening technique, Kaminari looking for his charger. Tonight, it was a tomb. The only sounds were the zip of zippers, the click of buckles, and the heavy, shaky breathing of 20 teenagers realizing their childhood was officially over. Izuku, the younger one, sat on the bench, pulling on his iron saws. His hands were shaking so badly he had to restart the laces 3 times. Deku-kun, Uraraka's voice was soft. She was standing by her locker, her helmet under her arm. She looked pale, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced by a stony resolve. Are you okay? Izuku looked up. I don't know. It was the honest truth. He felt hollowed out. The encounter in the infirmary had stripped away the golden veneer of his dream. He had seen the end of the road, and it wasn't a statue in the town square. It was a hospital bed and a missing finger. He said we lose, Izuku whispered. Even if we win, we lose. He's wrong, Bakugo said. Bakugo was standing by the mirror, adjusting his grenadier bracers. He wasn't looking at his reflection. He was staring through it. Kaken? That guy. Bakugo gritted his teeth. He's strong. I'll give him that. But he's a loser. The class turned to look at Bakugo. Usually, this would be an insult. But the tone was different. It wasn't mockery. It was a refusal to accept the premise. He gave up, Bakugo said, turning to face the room. He's talking about wars of attrition and society collapsing. That just means he wasn't strong enough to hold it up. It means we weren't strong enough. Bakugo walked over to Izuku. He loomed over him, red eyes burning. He said I died. Said I took a hit for him. Bakugo scoffed, though his voice wavered slightly. If I died, it's because I chose to. Not because I was weak. But I'm not planning on dying today, and neither are you, nerd. But, we aren't him. Bakugo shouted, a small explosion popping in his hand. We are here. Now. We know what's coming. If you know the test answers, you don't fail the test. You get a perfect score. Bakugo is right. Ida stepped forward, chopping the air, though his engines rattled with tension. This prime Midoriya comes from a timeline of surprise attacks and ignorance. We have been warned. We have the advantage of foresight. Plus, we have 2 Dekus, Kaminari offered with a nervous grin. That's gotta be worth something, right? Like double Detroit Smash? The tension in the room broke slightly. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the group. Then the door banged open. The air pressure in the room changed instantly. Prime stood in the doorway. He had geared up. Since his original costume was shredded, he had scavenged from the support department's rejects. He wore a dark gray tactical vest over the borrowed tracksuit. On his arms he wore a pair of gauntlets that looked like prototypes of Izuku's Air Force gloves, bulkier, unfinished, with exposed wiring. He had taped his ankles with heavy-duty athletic tape. He wore no mask. He looked less like a superhero and more like a mercenary. He scanned the room. His eyes lingered on faces, Ishido, Siro, Sato, as if checking a list of the dead. Gear check, Prime barked. You have 2 minutes. Who put you in charge? Bakugo challenged, though he didn't step forward. Experience, Prime said. He walked into the room, his heavy boots clanking on the tile. He walked straight to Momo Yaoyorozu. Creati, he said. Momo jumped slightly. Why yes? Cannons, Prime said. Can you make the 80mm railguns yet? I have studied the blueprints, but the lipid consumption is... Don't make the ammo, Prime interrupted. Just the barrels and the firing mechanism. Use Kaminari for the power source. Mount them on the high ground. He turned to Kaminari. Charge bolt. Do not discharge indiscriminately. You are a battery today. If you fry your brain, we lose our heavy artillery. Do you understand? Yes, sir. I mean, yeah. Kaminari saluted, terrified. Prime turned to Mineta. The small hero flinched. Grape juice, Prime said. The balls. Can you chain them? Chain them? Link them together with a delayed stickiness activation to create a net, Prime explained rapidly. Makia has thick skin. We can't pierce him easily. We have to bind him. I need a net covering the entire intersection of ground beta. I can try. Don't try. Do. Prime moved through the room, giving specific, tailored orders to everyone. He knew their quirks better than they did. He knew combo moves they hadn't even invented yet. Finally, he stopped in front of Izuku. The room went quiet. Suit up, Prime said. We're going to the roof. Why? Izuku asked. Because you're going to need float, Prime said. And right now, you're still grounded. Rooftop of Gym Gamma 10 minutes to impact. The night wind was howling now. The storm clouds Prime had brought with him were swirling directly overhead, a vortex of black and green. The sirens of the city were audible in the distance, a chorus of panic. Izuku stood by the railing, looking out at the dark forest surrounding Yae. He could see trees shaking in the distance. He was coming. Prime stood behind him. Activate one for all, Prime ordered. Izuku took a breath. Full cowl. Green lightning crackled around him. 20%. Push it, Prime said. 45%. I can't maintain 45% without hurting myself if I move too much, Izuku argued. You won't be moving. You'll be floating. Prime stepped closer. He didn't activate his own quirk yet. He just placed his hand, his 3-fingered hand, on Izuku's back, right between the shoulder blades. Feel it? Prime whispered. Izuku gasped. He felt it. It was like a door opening in the back of his mind. The resonance. Because Prime's body was touching his, the quirks were singing to each other. Inside the void, Nana Shimura was screaming. Not in pain, but in effort. Levitate, Prime's voice echoed in Izuku's head, not spoken aloud. It's not about flying. It's about rejecting the ground. It's about anger. Gravity is just another thing trying to hold you down. Hate it. That's not how Nana explained it. Izuku stammered. She said it was about freedom. Nana is dead, Prime said aloud, his voice harsh. Freedom is a byproduct. Survival is the goal. Push. Prime flexed his hand. A surge of raw, refined one for all flooded into Izuku. It wasn't a gentle transfer. It was a kickstart. Izuku's feet left the concrete. He hovered. 6 inches? A foot. 2 feet. He flailed his arms. Whoa! I'm doing it! Stop flailing, Prime snapped. Balance. Use Black Whip to anchor yourself if you have to. You are a turret. In the air you are harder to hit, but you have no leverage. You have to create your own leverage. Prime raised his leg and stomped down on the air itself. A shockwave blasted out, cracking the concrete roof below them without touching it. F.A. Gene, Prime said. Third user. Kinetic buildup. You don't have it yet. But I do. And right now, we are the same person. Prime grabbed Izuku's arm. Borrow it. What? Borrow my kinetic energy, Prime commanded. The timelines are bleeding together. My stockpile is leaking into yours. Don't question the physics, just take the power. Izuku felt a rush of heat in his legs. His muscles coiled like springs. He felt lighter, faster, explosive. Why? Izuku asked, turning to look at his future self, hovering beside him. Why are you helping me get stronger if you think we're doomed? Prime looked at the horizon. A massive shape had just crested the hill 3 miles away. Gigantomachia. He was a mountain of shadow against the night sky. Because, Prime said, his voice dropping. I remember this night. In my time. I was scared. I hesitated. And because I hesitated, Aizawa took a bullet in the leg. And because he took a bullet, he couldn't run fast enough later. And because he couldn't run, Prime closed his eyes. I'm cold, Izuku, Prime said. He wasn't talking about the temperature. I've been cold for a long time. I don't feel the thrill of saving people anymore. I just feel the math. Casualties versus assets. He opened his eyes. They were wet. But you. Prime looked at Izuku's wide, terrified, hopeful eyes. You still feel it. You're still warm. If I can save that, if I can keep you from becoming me, then maybe the timeline is worth saving. Izuku stared at him. He saw the monster Prime had become, but he also saw the boy buried underneath the scars. I won't become you, Izuku said firmly. Prime smirked. It was a dark, twisted expression. Good. I suck. Boom. The ground jumped. Gigantomachia had breached the outer wall. Showtime, Prime said. He didn't wait. He launched himself off the roof. He didn't glide. He exploded forward, breaking the sound barrier instantly. A streak of black lightning tearing through the sky. Wait! Izuku yelled. He engaged full cowl to 45%, combined with the newfound float. He felt clumsy, wobbling in the air, but he pushed off the invisible platform Prime had left behind. He chased his future. Ground beta the intersection. The fake city was quiet, bathed in the harsh light of the street lamps. Class 1A was positioned on the rooftops of the central four-way intersection. He's fast. Shoji yelled from his lookout post. He's through the forest. He's entering the urban zone. Positions! Ida commanded over the comms. Prepare the softening trap. From the northern street, a monster appeared. Gigantomachia was unimaginable. He was larger than a building. His footsteps shattered the pavement. He roared, a sound that blew out the windows of the fake storefronts. On his back, Toga, Dalby, Spinner, and Compass hopped around, holding on for dear life. Master! Machia screamed. I smell Master! He was sniffing the air. He smelled the 2-1-for-alls. Now! Prime's voice cut over the comms. He wasn't using a radio. He had tapped into their frequency with some piece of tech in his cowl. Hananuki, Class 1B, touched the ground. The pavement of the intersection turned to liquid mud. Makia's massive foot landed. Splash. He sank to his knees instantly. My Netta! Ciro! Prime barked. From the rooftops, a barrage of tape and sticky balls rained down, targeting Makia's face and arms. Get off me, bugs! Dabi yelled from Makia's back. He raised his hand. Blue fire ignited. Prominence. No you don't, a voice whispered right in Dabi's ear. Dabi's eyes went wide. Prime materialized out of the darkness behind Dabi. He was moving so fast he was a blur. He didn't punch Dabi. He grabbed Dabi's wrist, the one charging the fire, and twisted it with brutal, calculated efficiency. Crack! Dabi screamed. The fire misfired, shooting harmlessly into the sky. Prime kicked Dabi in the chest, sending him flying off Makia's back. He crashed through a second-story window of a nearby building. Dabi! Toga shrieked, pulling a knife. Prime looked at Toga. He didn't dodge her swing. He simply leaned back, letting the blade pass within a millimeter of his nose. Himiko, Prime said. Toga froze. No hero used her first name. You want to ask Izuku about love, right? Prime asked. He grabbed her knife hand, disarming her and pinning her to Makia's rocky hide. I'll give you an answer. Love is watching everyone you care about die because you were too weak to stop it. He headbutted her. It was a brutal, non-heroic move. Toga went limp, eyes rolling back. Prime tossed her unconscious body toward the building where Uraraka was waiting to secure her. 2 down, Prime announced. Get off him! Spinner yelled, charging with his massive sword made of other swords. Prime didn't even look. He raised his hand. Black Whip exploded out, not as thin tendrils, but as a massive, thick claw of black energy. It backhanded Spinner, shattering his weapon and sending the lizard villain tumbling into the street below. Makia! Shigaraki's voice, or rather, the recording of AFO playing from the radio around Makia's neck, boomed. Kill the interloper, Makia roared. He ignored the mud. He ignored the sticky balls. He simply flexed. The sheer force of his muscles expanding created a shockwave that cleared the rooftop. Prime was blown back, flipping in the air to land on a streetlight. He's too strong for physical restraints. Prime yelled. Yayorozu! The rail guns! Aim for the knees! Ready! Momo's voice cried out. 2 massive cannons, mounted on the adjacent roofs, whirred to life with Kaminari's electricity. Tum! Tum! 2 aluminum slugs, moving at Mach 3, slammed into Makia's kneecaps. The giant screamed. The armor plating on his knees cracked. He faltered, dropping to all fours. Now Izuku! Prime roared. Hit him! High! Izuku was in the air, high above the city. He was falling, gravity accelerating him. He channeled everything he had. 45%. F.A. Gene. Float. St. Louis. Smash! Izuku came down like a meteor. He aimed for the back of Makia's neck, hoping to knock him out. He connected. The impact cratered the street. Dust billowed up. Did we get him? Kirishima yelled. The dust cleared. Makia was still conscious. He was bleeding, but he was grinning. Little flies, Makia rumbled. He reached up with a hand the size of a van and swatted Izuku out of the air. Gah! Izuku smashed into a building, crashing through 3 walls before stopping. Izuku! Uraraka screamed. Prime watched his younger self fall. His face didn't change. He expected this. He's durable, Prime muttered to himself. Timeline confirmed. He's been boosted by the doctor earlier than in my history. Prime tapped his gauntlet. Plan B, Prime said into the comms. What's Plan B? Aizawa asked. We stopped trying to knock him out, Prime said, his eyes glowing with a lethal light. And we start taking him apart. Prime reached into his utility belt and pulled out a small, nondescript canister. What is that? Bakugo asked, landing next to Prime. Concentrated sedative mixed with Midnight's pheromones and something else, Prime said. What else? Nitroglycerin. Prime looked at Bakugo. Sweat harvested from your gauntlets in the future. It's a bunker buster. Prime primed the grenade. I'm going inside, Prime said. Inside the giant? Bakugo stared at him. You're crazy. I'm efficient, Prime corrected. Cover me, Prime leaped. He didn't aim for Machia's back. He aimed for his mouth. Machia roared, opening his maw to bite the annoying gnat. Open wide, Prime whispered. He threw the canister down Machia's throat. Then, as Machia's jaws clamped shut, Prime used Black Whip to snag a tooth and slingshot himself out at the last second, barely escaping being eaten. Muffled boom. Machia's eyes bulged. Smoke poured out of his nostrils. The giant staggered, clutching his throat. It won't kill him, Prime said, landing next to Bakugo. But it'll slow him down enough for the real fight. Real fight? Bakugo asked. What was that? Prime pointed to the sky. The clouds were parting. But not from the wind. Something was descending. Something that wasn't Machia. Floating above Yue, illuminated by the lightning, was Tamura Shigaraki. He was awake. His hair was white. His suit was torn. And he was smiling. I felt it. Shigaraki's voice drifted down, amplified by the sheer silence of the terrified students. A rip in the world. A new toy. Shigaraki looked directly at Prime. Hello, hero, Shigaraki said. You smell like dust. Have we met? Prime stared up at the floating demon. The man who had killed everyone he loved. Prime's body began to vibrate. Not with fear. With pure, distilled rage. One for all surged to 100%. The ground beneath Prime's feet turned to powder. Yeah, Prime whispered, though the microphone picked it up clearly. We met in hell. Prime looked at Izuku, who was pulling himself out of the rubble. Get up, Deku, Prime ordered. Class is over. The sky above Yue High School had turned the color of a bruise, a swirling vortex of purple and black, lit only by the jagged, unnatural lightning arcing from the body of the man floating in its center. Tamura Shigaraki. He didn't look like a villain anymore. He looked like a cataclysm given human form. His white hair whipped around his face, and his red eyes shone with a manic, childish delight that was infinitely more terrifying than anger. Below him, on the shattered pavement of ground beta, the heroes stood frozen. The air pressure was immense, a physical weight pressing down on their lungs, tasting of dust and decay. Izuku Midoriya, the younger, current version, pulled himself out of the rubble of the building he had crashed into. His body screamed in protest, but the adrenaline of one for all OFA numbed the worst of it. He looked up. He saw himself. Prime, the future Midoriya, stood atop a streetlight that was bending under his weight. The green lightning surrounding Prime was different from Izuku's. It wasn't the chaotic sparks of a power barely contained. It was a dense, thrumming aura, almost solid, like armor made of plasma. Formation! Prime's voice cut through the deafening wind. It wasn't a shout. It was a command that bypassed the ears and hit the nervous system directly. Range fighters, suppressive fire. Keep him distracted. Close quarters on me. Do not let him touch the ground. Why? Kirishima yelled, hardening his skin as he stepped up. Because if he touches the ground, Prime said, his eyes never leaving Shigaraki, the ground turns to dust. And then Yue sinks. I hear you! Shigaraki laughed. He raised a hand. You're loud for a dead man. Shigaraki pointed a finger. A wave of pressurized air, laced with radio waves, an air cannon quirk, blasted down toward the students. Move! Prime blurred. He didn't dodge. He intercepted. Prime appeared in the air directly in the path of the blast. He didn't block it with his arms. He kicked it. With a roar of exertion and a flare of Fa gene, Prime's iron soul met the invisible cannon blast. The collision created a shockwave that shattered every remaining window in a 3-block radius. Prime's kick split the air blast in two, sending the force harmlessly to the left and right, carving deep trenches into the fake city streets. Prime landed in a crouch, smoke curling from his leg. Bakugo! Shoto! Now! Prime barked. He didn't ask. He directed. Bakugo, fueled by instinct and fury, launched himself into the air. Don't tell me what to do! Flash freeze heatwave! Todoroki shouted from the ground, unleashing a massive wave of supercooled ice, instantly followed by a blast of searing fire. The rapid expansion of air created a localized explosion, propelling Bakugo even faster toward Shigaraki. Die! Bakugo screamed, unleashing a howitzer impact directly at Shigaraki's face. The explosion was blinding, but as the smoke cleared, Shigaraki was still there. He was floating, unbothered. A transparent, red-tinged shield flickered around him. Reflect, Prime muttered, his danger sense flaring. He has reflect. Shigaraki swiped his hand. The air distorted. A massive, invisible force swatted Bakugo out of the sky like a fly. Kaken! Izuku screamed, powering up his legs to catch him. Leave him! Prime ordered. Eyes on the target, Prime launched himself again. This time, he didn't kick air. He grabbed the nothingness of space with Black Whip, thick, ropey tendrils that looked more like cables than energy, and slingshot himself toward Shigaraki. The two collided in midair. It was a clash of gods. Prime's fist met Shigaraki's palm. Decay fought one for all. The sky cracked. Ground leveled the chaos. Izuku caught Bakugo just before he hit the pavement. They skidded to a halt, Izuku taking the brunt of the impact. Get off me, nerd! Bakugo snarled, shoving Izuku away, though he was wheezing. He's too strong, Izuku gasped, looking up at the aerial dogfight. Shigaraki, he's complete. The doctor finished him. Not completely, Todoroki said, sliding over on a ramp of ice. Look at his body. He's cracking. It was true. Every time Shigaraki clashed with Prime, small fissures opened on the villain's skin. The incomplete awakening meant his body couldn't handle the output of all for one perfectly. We have to exploit that, Izuku said. We have to help him. Help him? Bakugo spat, looking at Prime. That guy is a monster. Look at how he fights. They watched. Prime wasn't fighting like a hero. He was fighting like a machine designed for murder. He wasn't aiming to knock Shigaraki out. He was aiming to maim. Prime used Black Whip to snag Shigaraki's ankle, then yanked him down into a rising knee strike aimed at the spine. When Shigaraki tried to grab him, Prime used Float to abruptly change gravity, dropping like a stone to avoid the touch, then shooting back up with an uppercut that sounded like a gunshot. He's not hesitating, Uraraka whispered, joining them. He's trying to kill him, because he has to. Aizawa's voice came over their comms. Focus on the ground. We have incoming. From the shadows of the fake city, the high-end Nomas emerged. Not the hooded ones from Kyushu. These were the near high-ends, smart, fast, and hungry. Defend the perimeter. Ida ordered. Class 1A engage. The battle split into two levels. The war in the sky between the two titans, and the desperate brawl on the ground. Izuku found himself facing a Nomu with 4 arms and chainsaw-like protrusions on its elbows. It screeched and lunged. Detroit smash! Izuku yelled, punching the Nomu in the chest. The blow connected. The Nomu flew back, crashing into a wall. But it stood up immediately, its chest regenerating, the flesh knitting back together in seconds. It's not enough! Izuku panicked. My 45% isn't enough to put it down. Suddenly, a blur of gray and green slammed into the ground next to him. Prime had disengaged from Shigaraki for a split second to dive-bomb the ground war. Move, Prime growled, shoving Izuku aside. The Noma lunged at Prime. Prime didn't punch. He extended his hand, fingers like claws. Black Whip shot out, wrapping around the Noma's neck and all 4 limbs. Wait! Izuku yelled. We can restrain it. Regeneration type, Prime said coldly. Restraint is temporary. Death is permanent. Prime clenched his fist. The Black Whip constricted with the force of a hydraulic press. Squelch. The Noma didn't just break, it was bisected. Prime tore the creature's head from its body, then crushed the exposed brain in his hand. Dark blood sprayed over Prime's face. He didn't blink. He dropped the mangled remains and looked at Izuku. That, Prime pointed at the corpse, is how you save people. You remove the threat. Izuku stared at the carnage. He felt sick. That was alive. It was a person once. It was a weapon, Prime corrected. And it was trying to kill your friends. Do you want moral superiority, or do you want Uraraka to live to see graduation? Don't bring her into this. I'm bringing reality into this. Prime roared, the veins in his neck bulging. In my time, that Noma kills Sato. It rips his arms off. Because I tried to punch it. Because I tried to be All Might. Prime grabbed Izuku by the collar of his costume, pulling him close. You are weak because you think mercy is a default setting. Mercy is a luxury. And we are bankrupt. Before Izuku could respond, a blast of air pressure slammed into them, knocking them both down the street. Shigaraki had descended. Touching reunion. Shigaraki cackled, landing on a car, crushing it instantly. But I'm getting bored. Let's decay everything. He placed all 5 fingers on the hood of the car. No! Izuku screamed. The gray wave of decay shot out, turning the car to dust, then the pavement. It spread outward like a tidal wave, rushing toward the students. Float! Prime yelled. Everyone off the ground. Use debris. Use ice. Just get up. Prime grabbed Izuku and threw him into the air. Then Prime did something insane. He slammed his foot onto the ground directly in the path of the decay. One for all 100%. Wyoming smash. He didn't punch the villain. He punched the ground. The impact was so forceful it shattered the tectonic plate beneath the street. The concrete didn't just crack, it pulverized. Prime created a literal canyon, a physical gap in the earth 10 meters wide, separating Shigaraki's decay from the rest of the students. The decay wave hit the gap and stopped, having no medium to travel through. Prime stood on the edge of the precipice, panting. Blood was leaking from his nose. His arm, the one he had used to punch the ground, was bruised deep purple. He stopped it. Kirishima breathed. He broke the earth to stop the decay. Shigaraki looked across the chasm. He tilted his head. Smart, the villain admitted. But you're bleeding, hero. You're breaking down. I was broken a long time ago, Prime spat. The eye of the storm. The battle entered a momentary lull. Shigaraki retreated slightly to let his regeneration catch up with the damage Prime had dealt him. The Nomas were regrouping. The students huddled behind a wall of Cementas's creation. The teacher had arrived to reinforce the line. Prime sat on a crate, wrapping a bandage around his arm tight enough to cut off circulation. He was vibrating, not with fear, but with the sheer instability of his existence. Bakugo walked over to him. The explosion boy was unusually quiet. He looked at Prime's missing fingers. He looked at the scar on his mouth. Hey, Bakugo said. Prime didn't look up. Refuel, Kaken. You're sweating too much. You'll dehydrate. Shut up and listen to me, Bakugo growled. Prime paused. He looked up. The green eyes met the red ones. You said I died, Bakugo said. In the ruins of Ue. Yes. You said I saved you. Yes. Bakugo clenched his fists. Why? Prime sighed. He took a sip of water from a pouch. Because I was slow. Because I was tired. Because you were faster. No, Bakugo shook his head. I mean, why did you let me? Prime froze. You're me, Bakugo said, pointing at Prime then at himself. Or you know me. Better than anyone. You know I don't do self-sacrifice unless there's no other play. So if I took a hit for you, it means you were helpless. Completely helpless. Bakugo leaned in, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and horror. How weak did you get, Deku? How bad did it get that I had to die for you to live? The question hung in the air like smoke. Prime stared at Bakugo. For a moment, the soldier mask slipped. The exhaustion was profound. It wasn't about weakness, Kaken, Prime whispered. It was about exhaustion. We had been fighting for 4 days straight. No sleep. No food. Shigaraki was hunting us. I twisted my ankle. Stupid, right? The world's greatest hero, taken out by a piece of rubble. Prime looked at his hand. I fell. Shigaraki lunged. He was going to steal one for all. You saw it. You didn't think. You just moved. Prime's voice cracked. You shoved me out of the way. His hand went through your chest. He didn't even decay you at first. He just skewered you. And you looked at me, blood in your mouth, and you smiled. Bakugo's breath hitched. You smiled, Prime repeated, tears pooling in his eyes. And you said, stop trying to win this alone, you damn nerd. Prime looked up at Bakugo, tears finally spilling over the scars. And then you exploded. You detonated all your sweat stored in your costume at point-blank range. You vaporized yourself to blow Shigaraki back and give me time to run. Bakugo stood there stunned. The imagery was visceral. It sounded exactly like something he would do. And that terrified him. I ran, Prime whispered. I ran while your ashes fell like snow. And I hated myself for every step. Bakugo looked down. He was shaking. You idiot, Bakugo whispered. You absolute moron. Yeah, Prime agreed. I didn't do it so you could run, Bakugo said, his voice thick with emotion. I did it so you could win. And you didn't even do that. You just survived. Prime flinched. It was a direct hit. I'm trying, Prime said softly. I'm trying to fix it now. Then stop fighting like you want to die. Bakugo yelled, grabbing Prime's vest. You're fighting Shigaraki like a suicide bomber. You're throwing yourself at him. If you die here, my death in the future, or whatever, it means nothing. Get up. Bakugo yanked him. We're fighting him together. Me, you, and the nerd. No more solo acts. You got that, future boy? Prime looked at Bakugo's fierce, determined face. For the first time since he arrived, a flicker of genuine light entered Prime's eyes. Loud, Prime muttered, a small smile tugging at his scarred lip. You're so loud. Good, Bakugo released him. Now tell us how to beat him. The lesson. Izuku walked over. He had heard the end of the conversation. He looked at his future self with new understanding. Prime wasn't cold because he didn't care. He was cold because he cared too much, and it had broken him. Okay, Prime said, standing up. Here is the reality. We cannot kill Shigaraki with blunt force. He regenerates too fast. We have to overload him. Overload? Todoroki asked. His body is at 75% completion, Prime explained. The quirk singularity theory. His hardware cannot handle the software. If we force him to use multiple quirks simultaneously, regeneration, decay, air cannon, radio waves, while hitting him with 100% impacts, he will glitch. His body will tear itself apart. Prime turned to Izuku. I can't do it alone. My body is already at its limit. If I go 100% again, my heart stops. He looked at Izuku. But you're fresh. Your bones are intact. But I can only use 45%, Izuku said. No, Prime shook his head. You think you can only use 45%. But right now, we are resonating. My experience is bleeding into you. Prime held out his hand. Black Whip, Prime said. Izuku summoned the tendrils. Not like a rope, Prime corrected. Like a brace. Wrap your own bones. Internal bracing. Use Black Whip inside your costume to reinforce your skeletal structure. Izuku blinked. I never thought of that. I invented it 3 years from now, Prime said. Wrap your arms. Wrap your legs. Create an exoskeleton of energy. It will allow you to withstand 100% impact without shattering your limbs. It hurts like hell, but your bones won't break. Izuku closed his eyes. He focused. He visualized Black Whip not extending outward, but wrapping tight around his arms, layering over his skin like a cast. He felt the pressure. It was agonizing, like a tourniquet. I feel it, Izuku grunted. Good, Prime said. Now float. Shoto, we need a path. Create a tunnel of ice to funnel him upward. Bakugo, you're the propellant. Blast us both toward him. And then? Izuku asked. And then, Prime's eyes went dark. We hit him with everything. Double Detroit smash. 100%. The apex. Shigaraki was tired of waiting. Enough planning. The villain shrieked, launching himself across the chasm. I'll just take one for all from your corpses. Now! Prime screamed. Todoroki slammed both hands onto the ground. A massive glacier erupted, not to freeze Shigaraki, but to create a ramp, forcing the villain into the air. Bakugo flew behind the two Midoriyas. AP shot, autocannon boost. He unleashed a continuous stream of explosions against their backs, propelling them forward like missiles. Izuku and Prime flew shoulder to shoulder. Green lightning merged. The younger, brighter green of Izuku mixed with the dark, dense emerald of Prime. The sound was like a jet engine. Shigaraki saw them coming. He grinned. I'll take it. He reached out with both hands. Give it to me, Black Whip! Both Midoriyas yelled in unison. Dozens of black tendrils shot out from both of them. But they didn't aim for Shigaraki. They aimed for each other. They lashed their bodies together, locking arms, creating a single, unified projectile of mass and energy, the vestiges roared. In the dreamscape, the first user stood between the two Midoriyas, holding their hands. Smash him, Nana Shimura whispered, one for all. Izuku screamed, feeling the 100% power flood his braced arm. It burned, but the bones held. 100%. Prime roared, pouring his life force into the blow. Shigaraki panicked. He felt the pressure. It was too much. Rivets. Air cannon. Shield. Hyperregan. He tried to activate everything at once. His skin tore. Blood sprayed from his eyes. Double. They reached him. Detroit smash. Two fists hit Shigaraki's chest simultaneously. There was no sound at first. Just light. Then, the atmosphere collapsed. A shockwave of biblical proportions exploded outward. The clouds above UA were blown away instantly, revealing the stars. The glass of every building in a 5-mile radius shattered. Shigaraki was launched backward. He didn't fly, he vanished. He was a streak of light hitting the atmosphere, skipping off the air pressure like a stone on water, blasted miles away into the mountains. The two Midoriyas hovered in the air for a split second, suspended in the afterglow of their power. Then they fell, the aftermath of the clash. They hit the ground hard, tumbling into the soft mud created by Class 1B earlier. Izuku gasped for air. His arms were purple, bruised deeply, but unbroken. The black whip brace had worked. We did it, Izuku wheezed. He looked over at Prime. Prime was lying on his back, staring at the stars. He wasn't moving. Deku? Izuku crawled over. Hey! Are you okay? Prime coughed. It was a wet, bubbly sound. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. He's not dead, Prime whispered. What? Shigaraki, Prime rasped. We didn't kill him. He regenerated at the last second. I felt it. But we blew him away. He's miles away. He'll come back, Prime said. He tried to sit up, but collapsed back down. His skin was glitching, fading in and out of transparency. Your body. Izuku's eyes widened. Prime's hand was becoming see-through. I used too much, Prime murmured. The temporal anchor is slipping. I can't stay here much longer. Recovery Girl and the other students were running toward them. Bakugo landed, looking frantic. Hey! Scarface! Get up! Bakugo yelled. I need. Prime grabbed Izuku's wrist. His grip was weak. I need to give you something. Before I go, save your strength. Izuku cried. Listen to me. Prime's voice suddenly gained a sharp intensity. The notebook. My notebook. In my tactical pouch. Izuku fumbled with the pouch on Prime's belt. He pulled out a small, charred, blood-stained notebook. Hero Analysis for the Future, number 21. It has everything, Prime wheezed. Shigaraki's weaknesses. All for one's hideouts. The trader's schedule. Trader? The class froze. Read it, Prime said. But not now. Now, you have to hide. Hide? Bakugo scoffed. We just kicked his ass. He's going to evolve, Prime said, his eyes closing. That hit, it pushed him. He'll wake up fully in a few hours. And when he does, he'll be worse. Prime's breathing hitched. Get everyone underground. Into the fortress. Seal the doors. What about you? Uraraka asked, tears in her eyes. Prime looked at the students of Class 1A. He saw them alive. He saw them uninjured. He saw Bakugo standing there, breathing. For the first time, the tension left his body completely. I'm just a ghost, Prime whispered. Ghosts don't need saving. He looked at Izuku. You're strong, Izuku. Stronger than I was. You have them. He gestured to the class. I lost them. But you kept them. A tremor went through the ground. Far in the distance, a purple light flared in the mountains. He's coming back, Prime said. Move. Now. The urgency returned. Aizawa picked up Prime's fading body. We're moving to the shelters. Go! Go! As they ran, Izuku clutched the notebook to his chest. He looked at Prime, who was limp in Aizawa's arms. He realized then that they weren't just two sides of the same coin. They were two different coins entirely. Prime was the currency of war, spent, battered, and used up. Izuku was the currency of hope, shiny, unproven, but holding infinite potential, and Izuku swore, as they descended into the dark of the UA underground, that he would not spend himself the way Prime had. He would find a way to keep the value of life high, he would save everyone. Even himself.